Last minute shakeup at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning, Ryan. It's okay.
And staying in front of the day isn't always as
Thanks,
simple
Ryan.
as 1,
What's
2,
up?
3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
What's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
let NASM 1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
You're listening to Random Fit with hosts Wendy Batts and Ken Miller, winner of a Gold Markham Award for Digital Media.
Welcome to Random Fit, everyone. I am Wendy Batts here with my friend and co-host, as always, Ken Miller. Kenneth, how are you?
I'm fine, Wendy. How you doing?
I am great.
Good.
And today we are going to actually talk about the truth behind common fitness beliefs. I know Ken and I were talking about some of our clients asking us questions, especially since January. I mean, I know now we're February heading into March, and here we are. So we're going to talk about some of the, I don't want to call them fitness myths, because there are some kind of in-betweens, as Kat would say. It depends, but I think we're going to talk about a little we're going to talk about a lot of information, and then we're going to talk about some of the research behind why we say what we say, and hopefully it will help you guys as well if you are fitness enthusiasts that have some of these thoughts in your head, or if you have clients that come to you, if you're a trainer, you kind of have some ammo behind some of the answers you can provide.
Well, and I think when you and I first talked about this, Wendy, the idea that you and I have been doing this collectively for almost 60 years combined.
Oh, God.
That's a lot of years. But
Well, you are way older than me, Ken.
way.
Just kidding.
I'm providing at least 40 of those 60 years. But these are the things that we've been talking about for, literally decades, as far as addressing some of the same questions addressing the comments, right? They come in and they're confident that this is how the body works. And, as a personal trainer, as a strength coach, you're like, well, kind of, but not really. You don't want to totally blow them up as far as, the misinformation that they're coming in with. But there is some education that still has to come along with helping somebody get to whatever their goals are, whether it's body composition, performance, or just wanting to feel better. But I think we can address more than a few of their common conceptions when it comes to what's it going to take for me to get better, or do more of what I want to do, or look the way I want to feel, or look the way I want to feel, look the way I want to look, feel the way I want to feel. So yeah, so the idea that, again, I started personal training in the mid 90s, early 90s, and just within the last few weeks, I found myself addressing some of the same comments that I heard when I first started personal training. But of course, now we have a lot more information supporting what we're going to talk about. So, Wendy, you want to start us off on the first one?
Yeah, first, I think it's really important to say that technology is a blessing and a curse at the same time, because if you start to go down a rabbit hole and it's the wrong one, that's where I think some of the misinformation becomes a problem. There are a lot of Instagrammable things and whatever can catch someone's eye. And if you don't dive deep into maybe what they're saying, like there's a caption and they're like, well, I saw so-and-so who's highly, sought after, and they said this, but when you go and dig deep into what they were saying, it was like, hey, we're putting this out there to get you to read that maybe it is a misconception. So sometimes I think we get lost a little bit, maybe just in what the title of something might be, and we just don't have time, and we're just like, well, they said it, I saw it on a post, but they didn't kind of read a little bit more. I think that's also sometimes where we get a little confused. But the first one, and this is something that came to me, that's why it's number one on my list, is and unfortunately, this is usually from females. Now, again, I'm not just putting all females in this category. So please, before I get hate mail, realize that I'm just going to throw this out there, that usually it's a woman that asked me this question because I'll tell them to go pick up a set of 20-pound dumbbells and we're going to be doing something. And they're like, oh, no, that is extremely too heavy, because I don't lift heavy because I don't want to get bulky. And if I lift heavy, I'm going to get bulky, even though this person is super strong. Their assessments show they're capable of doing it. We've been maybe working out for a while, and I'm still going to have them do 12 to 15 reps. And Ken, I know you probably get this often as well, but what are your thoughts on that?
I hear it all the time as well. I gotta do high reps. If I get less than 8 repetitions, my biceps are going to stretch the seams of my sleeves. My thighs are gonna, I don't want my thighs, my quads to get any bigger than they are right now. And Wendy, I kind of have to turn the table on them a little bit, in the fact that, yeah, there is a physiological response to resistance training, especially if you're on the lower rep range, right? But I always have to reframe it as, well, where do you see yourself, especially if you were going to bring up female clients, where do you see yourself being in 10, 15, 20 years from now, as far as what your capacity for work is? So the idea that we want to lift and I don't want to put on any muscle mass, well, there's other benefits to putting on muscle mass, right? So just to kind of lower that, I guess the importance of putting on lean body mass, because if the more you can put on, the better. And I can't say that to half of the new people that I talk to. It's like, you want to get bulky, you want as much muscle mass now, especially if I'm talking to someone who's in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. You want as much muscle mass now, because when you get into your 60s, 70s, and 80s, that's the reservoir of lean tissue and strength that you're going to have to harvest from when it comes to, if you want to open up that jar of pickles, if you want to pick up that gallon of milk or whatever it is, you need to lift weights. You need to lift heavy. You need to, for lack of a better way to say it, you need to bulk up. So,
and I think a lot of that too, we've done master instructor roundtables. Ken, you and I have talked about it on Random Fit before, but sarcopenia is a thing. Osteoporosis is a thing as we age.
Right.
And after a certain period of time, our body cannot really bulk up. We start losing, as you said, we start losing muscle mass. And even though, like you said, build up the reservoir, that's the best way of putting it, because we want to try. Now, again, we're not looking to try to be a bodybuilder. I don't want to be a bodybuilder, but it's important that we lift heavy. It's important for our muscles. It's important for our bones and activities of daily living, because there are times where you're going to have to pick up something heavy. And if you never do it and you don't train for it, that's where we start to see a diminished return. We start to see injuries occurring. We start to see people with low back pain. And so I think that the really important part of what we want to say, and why NASM is as great as it is we provide you with a systematic progressive model. And so we want to think about starting you out lifting lighter loads, working on proper form, good range of motion, ideal movement patterns of what we do every single day. And then we build upon that safely. And so when we get into our quote phase 2, which is more of the supersets, we're starting to build some strength. We're still working on stabilization. And then when we get to more hypertrophy or muscle development in phase 3, yes, you might put on a little more size, but at the same time, what are you eating? Diet and calories are going to play a huge role in how big you get. And I personally would like to be lean and defined versus being big. And so it's important that I look at my nutrition, because if I'm taking in a ton of calories, I'm lifting heavy, I am going to get bigger than I quote want to be. So I need to know how many calories I'm eating each day. And then I want to make sure that certain days I lift heavy, certain days I work on stabilization. So it's lighter loads, more high reps. But if you're going to do max development, you want to do full power, then you really kind of want to build your way up. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to fit into your skinny jeans. It just means that you're going to need to burn higher calories. And that's what lifting heavy does too. You're starting to burn calories as you lift heavy. As you gain muscle mass, you burn calories. And that, I think, is where people sometimes get a little confused, because we want to enhance that lean muscle mass. We want to boost your metabolism. We want to improve your body composition, and lifting higher loads and doing 8 to 12 repetitions is not going to make you look like a bodybuilder. It will not do that. But I mean, you want to challenge your body, because over time it gets used to that load, and you just start to see no changes in the way that you feel, you look, or you perform, because you're not switching it up. We've talked about periodization multiple times. Your body starts to adapt every 4 to 6 weeks. So you want to push it to its limit, but at the same time, you want to be smart in your programming, because that shouldn't be done every single time you go into the gym.
You need to mix it up. You need to change things around. And you bring up a great point there. You know, you oscillate between the adaptations. You want to create that stability first. And this is where getting into that muscular development, or that hypertrophy, that muscle building phase of training, a lot of even males that want to physically be bigger, they miss the boat on the volume and intensity to get as big as they possibly can, because a lot of people don't realize how much work goes into that, or how much volume. And the biggest piece that people miss when it comes to training specifically to put on size is the rest.
Yeah.
Right. So if somebody wants to put on size, you know, it's about volume. You want to have as much volume density in your programming as possible. And that means having a limited amount of rest in between sets. And you know as well as I do, Wendy, when you go into the gym, somebody finishes, let's just say, a bench press, and then they start chatting it up. And next thing you know, 3, 4, 5 minutes has gone by, and then they do their next set. Well, guess what? You've lost that volume density, right? You've given yourself too much of a break to actually create that stimulus for muscular development at that point, or one way of putting on lean tissue. But that's the bigger part. And a lot of people who even want to get bigger aren't doing all the things to get bigger. So it's for somebody to say, well, I don't want to get bigger. Don't worry. It's not just gonna happen, because you have to be in the right phase. And even then, you have to be at the right phase with the execution for that phase of training. So for, you know, if you're talking about that female client who's afraid of getting bulky, so they stay away from lifting altogether, there's so many things about resistance training that you are missing. Like you said, Wendy, there's the aspect of stability training, injury prevention. By having stronger hips, more mobile spine, you're going to save yourself from low back issues. But also, if we look at how powerful we need to be 30, 40 years from now, you need to train for speed. And the aspect of training in a way that's for putting on lean tissue, it's so specific, right? And it's only, you know, basically it's 1/5 of the training model that you and I both teach. So it's a smaller part of a bigger picture, and that's if you do it right. So I tell my clients who, or even potential clients who are afraid of bulking up, say, don't worry, it's not as big a part of lifting weights as you think, or resistance training as you think it is, because you have to for one, you have to be doing it, and then you have to be doing it right.
Right.
That's the other part of it.
Well, I think that's the biggest thing. You know, there's a difference between looking toned, if you will, meaning being defined, and being bulky. I mean, I don't want any of my clients to be bulky. I mean, that's not, they don't come in and say that their SMART goal is, I want to be bulky today. There, you know, there's always something more specific, and nutrition's going to play a key role. And like I said, how many calories are you taking in, and where are we within the model? I mean, day one, when you come in, I am not going to have you do a 1 rep max. And especially if you haven't been working out and lifting as heavy as you possibly can until failure, that doesn't make sense. And I'm not prepping your body the right way to get you safely and effectively and efficiently to your goal. So that's number one. So I'm glad we covered that one. But this one I hear all the time, and actually heard this 3 or so weeks ago from one of my male clients that said, Wendy, I need to lose the area around my midsection because summer is going to be approaching sooner than we think. Time is flying by. And so I want most of my exercises to be some sort of abdominal work. And so I asked him, okay, let's take a step back. So basically they're talking about spot reduction, right? They want to lose body fat in a certain area. And guys, I hate to bust the bubble here, but unfortunately, a lot of that is going to depend on what are you eating, how much cardio are you doing, how heavy lifting are you doing, how many calories are you burning throughout the day, and then also genetics, unfortunately, plays a key role in that. I'm Greek, so I lose weight in my upper body faster than my lower body, but I work my lower body super hard, more so than my upper body, but I see results on my upper body quicker than I do my lower body. And it is frustrating, but if you want to lose like the area around your hips, you have to do that more than just hip work. Or if you want to do, lose your midsection and you want to really get great abs, you guys can crunch all day long. You can do ab work all day long, but the fat around it is not going to go away unless we start to really dive into your nutrition, your diet plan, and then our calorie ratio versus what are we doing in the gym and what are you doing on your own.
And I love that idea too, of the fact that, well, where it's an advantage for me, Wendy, is that I can work out and maybe on the scale, I lost maybe 6-7 pounds, but people will see my face. So I carry cheeks, right? I got cheeks on my face, but it looks like I lost 12 pounds, right? So the way when I lose weight, my fat actually would come off of my face and my neck first. So I'll have long sleeve shirts on, pants and, jeans and all that stuff, but it looks like I lost twice as much weight as I actually did, because the idea that muscle doesn't own the fat that's on top of it, right? And that's what we're talking about with the idea of spot reduction. So if you're listening to both Wendy Batts and I, Ken Miller, here on Random Fit, we're talking about truth behind common fitness belief. And when it comes to spot reduction, that's the biggest thing. Because like what you just brought up in the example there, Wendy, like even I have, my daughter, she's asking about what I have to do to get 6-pack abs, right? And she's just asking. She's not like going to dive in to the deep end and, do a bunch of sit-ups, but she's at that age where now she's starting to get interested in how her body is responding to exercise. Like, when am I going to do this? Because she does multiple sports, and when am I going to see 6-pack abs? And she's pretty lean already, but I had to tell her that, well, it's about nutrition and exercise, and it's the nutrition that I lead off with, because that's the biggest part of it all, right? What they say, abs are made in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So
there's truth behind that.
There's a lot of truth behind that, but and when you take on a new potential client and you're in that first consultation, Wendy, that's one of the things that I talk about 80% of the time when it comes, if I'm not talking about someone's low back issues or shoulder issues or something orthopedic or something post rehab, and it is related to body composition change, they're always asking about, well, what's the best ab exercise? Or if I do my hanging leg lifts, am I going to see abs faster because it's harder? I'm like, well, there's multiple parts to that statement, but the other part that goes into you talking about exercise is us talking about how's your food intake.
Well, and it's also brings us back to the model and why we do what we do. If we have optimal joint alignment, that means the muscle that we're like our primary muscle that we're trying to use is working it to its full potential, meaning that there's not other muscles that are filling in and compensating just to get that particular movement pattern complete. And so if we can realign the body and we get it working as optimally as possible, we are going to see better results. But it is the combination of consistent training, adding cardio in, trying to increase your heart rate. I mean, there's a lot of obviously health benefits too, because we've got to train our hearts. We want to push ourselves, but and then of course there is the genetic part of where are you going to see it. And I tell people all the time, that people will say, well, I want arms like that person. Well, if you look at that person and they go to the gym, they may be lifting a really heavy amount on their arms, but that's just, they're still small, if you will, but you can see them, they look defined, and people are like, well, I want to look like that. And I'm like, well, then we need to lift more than 5 pounds. And so it kind of brings us back. That's also with the bulky part. So we burn a lot of calories when you lift heavy and you work bigger muscle groups. You're going to see positive results because you are still burning fat while you're doing that. And it is more complicated than calories in versus calories out. People say that all the time. There is a lot more more to that, but it's not, I have my own thoughts about some of the stuff that's out there on the market. Well, I can lose weight and do things really quickly, but what are you getting in return? And if you start to look at some of the research that's out there with some of these quick fixes, yes, you start to lose weight, you start to lose, they're like, oh, you're losing body fat. I'm like, well, a lot of it you're losing is muscle mass. And so the skill may be going down. You might see some of the areas shrinking, but there's also a lot of long-term effects of the importance of being consistent in your workouts and making sure that what you're doing makes sense. Plus, if somebody says, okay, I want 6-pack abs and all they do is crunches, that can also lead to low back pain if you're not careful. Because if someone has a big arch in their lower back, or they have compensation patterns and they just crunch and crunch and crunch, one of the muscles that are affected the most when you're doing that is your psoas, right? It's one of the hip flexor muscles, but it attaches to every lumbar spine, or every one of your lumbar spine, and then it comes over and it's one of your hip flexors. Well, if that continuously stays in a shortened, chronically shortened position, and you're constantly working an overactive muscle, and you're not giving it a break, you're not doing the right stretches, and you're not doing everything to help balance your body back, then you're going to end up with some low back pain. Possibly you can start to then have some issues with the vertebrae in your lower back, because you're starting to then put more pressure on the vertebrae and the discs in between that. So you have to be very smart in your training. Again, you want it to be very well-rounded, but if somebody wants to quote spot reduce, you need to make sure that you nip that pretty fast, because unfortunately, it's not a thing.
Yeah.
I've tried it, y'all. It does not work.
It does not work.
It does not work.
I'm also proof of that as well. So it comes off there last, as far as my target area. But before we get into the next one, Wendy, I just want to say that this episode of Random Fit is brought to you by NASM 1. The membership for trainers and coaches. Members enjoy unlimited access to hundreds of career resources. Get the Edge app to schedule and program clients. Enjoy half off all certifications and specializations, access free CEUs, and more. All this for just $35 a month. Go to nasm.org/membership to learn more about NASM 1. So, Wendy, you're starting to broach on the next common fitness belief. No pain, no gain. How many gyms have you walked into? And maybe not so much anymore, but in days of yore, when it comes to no pain, no gain. How many shirts have you seen that on?
Oh, shirts, and then pain is leaving the body, all the
pain
whoever
is weakness,
came up with some of this stuff has made a fortune. And I get this a lot with my professional athletes. A lot. Professional athletes, more so than I do my everyday clients that are very consistent in their program. But I will have people come and say, well, Wendy, I wasn't that sore after my workout. I'm like, well, that's fantastic. And they're like, no, I need to work harder. I want to wake up and feel like when I get out of bed, I can barely walk. Like, that's how I know that I had a really good workout. And maybe they started that way, doing really lightweight body weight, because we were activating muscles that they hadn't really been using to its full potential, but due to compensation patterns or whatever the case may be. However, guys, there is an issue that if you lift heavy all the time and you're not doing proper nutrition, you're not properly resting, you're not sleeping very well, then your body's going to break down. And that isn't always a good thing. Now, there's a difference between discomfort and waking up and being like, oh man, I'm a little sore here. But when you really can't walk up and down your stairs, or you can't do things, then it was too much. And that can lead to overtraining. That can lead to then you're not moving correctly throughout the day. That can then translate into compensation patterns that you didn't have before. But, emphasizing that pain is like, oh, that's the win. That is not the approach you should have with your clients, your athletes or whomever you're working with, because there's a difference between being having discomfort, meaning you worked them, versus you're so miserable you don't want to do anything for 3 or 4 days. So you sit there like a stain, and that's definitely not the right approach.
Sit there like a stain. Is that
well, stains don't move. So
yeah, I get it. But I want to
too much.
I do want to touch on one of the points that you brought up when you bring up athletes, and I know you work with a lot of your clientele are professional athletes, and from that standpoint, and I'm reflecting on a conversation I had with a client, and it's like, yeah, this guy, he's playing through hamstring or he's playing through ankle injury, whatever the situation was, and then I was thinking, well, you know what, that guy's getting paid $5 million a year to be on the field or on the court. So yeah, I'd play through some pain too. I'd work out through some pain too if I was getting paid. But most of our clients, Wendy, they're not getting paid to be hurt. And that's where I think there's that disconnect between, you see this professional athlete, they're doing amazing things in the sport that they play. They look amazing. They look great. They're lean. They're probably, 8-9% body fat, and they've played through pain. But here's the thing, they're getting paid for it. And if they don't play, right, if they don't perform, that next person on the bench is going to take their spot. So, and that goes for especially college kids who are hungry. They've fought for a spot and they want to keep that spot. So the other part of that is that you also have somebody who's maybe hurt. They get on the court, they dunk the ball or catch a great pass, but they also have an athletic trainer. They have a physical therapist. They have whatever medical staff that's going to help them relieve that pain when it comes to whatever they did on the court or whatever training session that they did. So there's also that hidden piece of no pain, no gain when it comes to athletics. Because if you have that support, if there is a way for some relief to come your way, that works in that environment. But for our typical clientele who, they just want to work out really hard. They want to get that last rep. They want to put on that last 5-pound plate on their bench, and they want to get, so much in their max reps or their max bench. But there's no athletic trainer waiting for you at home that's going to help you get better or feel better, right? You've got to live with that until you find some resolution to feeling better. So getting that one more rep, putting on those 5 more pounds and whatever weight you're trying to lift, that's not worth it, because you're going to have to live with, you're going to have to go to bed, you're going to have to wake up, you're going to have to go into the next training session feeling how you feel based on your last workout. And if that injury or that ache is lingering too long, or whatever that soreness is in that respective joint, that's only going to take away from future workouts. And I think that's the big picture, that phrase of no pain, no gain idea, or that frame of mind. You have to take that with you, because well, if I go farther, well, I remember the last time I did that weight, or the last time I did that amount of repetitions or sets, I did not feel good. Right. So you have to do something else. So if anything, when you talk about those nociceptors that tell you, okay, your joint does not like this, listen to your body. And, there are other ways of challenging the body, or certain motions or certain positions that won't elicit that pain reaction during that session or even the next day. So there are workarounds that, you don't have to live by that motto. If anything, we discourage living by that motto.
Well, I think there was another key point before we move on. My son loves to watch different movies, and we were watching Rocky, and you've got the trainer like, no pain. And, he's going through it and he's screaming. And if you guys haven't seen some of the Rocky movies, you're missing out. They're oldies but goodies. But, so, having a coach or a trainer or a personal trainer saying, push through it. There's a difference. And I have done that. Like, come on, guys, you can do one more. And he's like, I can't. I'm like, just push. And you're there and you're spotting them and you're making sure that they can get that last rep. That's different, because I am working on muscle quote burn, and I'm fatiguing that muscle itself. And you kept saying, even in your last few comments, about the joints. There's a difference between muscle pain and muscle fatigue. And that's maybe what we're trying to elicit during that session. So if there's soreness in the muscle, that's actually okay. And that's why recovery and working with, your hyper-ice percussion devices or working with foam rollers or whatever the case may be can help work out some of that soreness. And that's why recovery is so important. But if you're starting to feel something in the joint or something sharp or something doesn't feel right, that is not a good thing, because that means you're doing something incorrectly. And so just as you're going through it, realize it's okay to push yourself. It's okay to do that last rep. It's okay to feel, quote, the burn or whatever. But if you start to feel joint discomfort, you need to shut it down and reevaluate your movement patterns and the quality of movement, because there's a big, big difference there that could lead to, you can need to shut everything down and then go into some kind of corrective program because you injured yourself too much. So I just wanted to differentiate that, because you kept saying joint and I was like, that's a good way of looking at the differences. But what about this one, Ken? Cardio is the only way that you're going to lose weight. You got to get on that same machine for 30 to 45 minutes, producer. And you want to continuously just do the same thing, watching everyone around, but you're not seeing some of the gains. I just got a frowny face, by the way. And I know this because we hear this often. I'm always doing cardio. But if you're not seeing any changes, what do you say to that, Ken?
That's the definition of insanity, right, Wendy? I think is doing the same thing.
I am stepping back.
Doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result. And there's no other component of fitness or working out than cardio that gives it such high expectation but such a low return, especially and here's the thing, Wendy, when it comes to clients, it's like, I'm doing my cardio, whatever their modality is, they, even when they do cardio, their cardiorespiratory fitness, whatever they're doing on the treadmill, the bike, the elliptical, the Stairmaster, outside run, whatever it is that you do, a lot of people, even when they do it, they're doing the same thing over and over and over again. So there's one thing, cardiorespiratory conditioning is important. It's, again, the number one muscle in the body is the heart. If the heart's not doing what it's supposed to do, then nothing works well. So many benefits to training cardio. So we don't want to, downplay the importance of cardio, because you need a good cardiorespiratory system, because again, what gets oxygen to all the muscles, right? Fingernails to toenails. It's the heart, and it's responsible for recovery days, zone 2 training. So it is important. But when we're talking about cardio for the sake of fat loss, it's not very effective at all. But as a singular piece. But when you take your treadmill work, your morning swim, whatever it is, but you add resistance training and you add nutrition, which we've been talking about, now it's an effective piece of the puzzle, because you're actually toggling with multiple ways of affecting what you're taking in calorie wise and what you're putting out calorie wise.
Well, and to piggyback off of that, I mean, we could just end it there, but I think it's also important to just reiterate the importance of, if you're always doing the same type of cardio, your body starts to adapt to it. So you need to change it up. If you want to do the treadmill, because the treadmill is like your love, your passion, you love to do it, then if you're just walking on the treadmill, then throw some sprints in there. If you are throwing sprints in there, throw a different incline in there. Do it different ways and challenge yourself instead of it always being the same pace, doing the same amount of mileage. Sometimes do a really hard short one, do a longer, more of something on the treadmill that you're just doing, make it different. But then I also just tell people, if you're always doing the treadmill, then do something different. Like go into a swimming pool. Like, I don't know, I hadn't swam in a really long time, and I went and tried to do laps the other day, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was getting crushed. And I'm like, I can go and run and, feel like I'm getting a good workout. I'm sweating, I'm doing all of it. But I was constantly doing the same thing. I went into the pool, and within like 5 minutes, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I have enough energy to make it to even 15 minutes. So because I was using different muscles, I was challenging my breathing and my heart. I was working different ways. And so it made it so much harder because I hadn't been doing that type of training. So your body starts to adapt. You have to change it. Again, most people are like, I don't want to swim. I don't want to have to put the hair cap on. I don't want to be in front of people. I get all of that. But that was just an example. If you don't want to do that and you're a treadmill person, try the rower. The rower machine is really challenging. People are really weak in the posterior side and the upper back, especially. So it's something that's going to be very beneficial to you. So just think switching it up is going to be very crucial. But the last one, Ken, because I mean, I know we have a list. We could probably go on for hours.
Yeah.
But the last one I wanted to kind of bring to the forefront, and I know this one's kind of important, is people say, well, Wendy, I need to work out for, I go to the gym and I'm there for 2 hours. And I ask them, like, why? Like, why?
Yeah.
What do you do in the gym for 2 hours? Are you showering? Are you doing your hair? Are you going to eat? Like, and they're like, no, like I'm on the floor. Your body doesn't need to be challenged for that long in order to see really good gains. I tell people you can come in, you can spend exactly an hour coming in and foam rolling, doing your mobility work, getting proper stretches, and then at that point doing a intense type of program. Now, again, what is your goal? If your goal is fat loss, then we're going to do what we call more of a vertical load. We're going to do one exercise after another. We're going to push the limit, meaning we're going to set a rep range. We're going to make sure if I say 12 reps on number 12, you wouldn't be able to do number 13. And then we immediately go into something else and we limit the breaks that we take in between. Now, if you are looking for muscle mass hypertrophy, you're trying to do something, you have to have those breaks to build the ATP and everything that you need to fully be able to maximize that lift. That's completely different. So that's why having your goal in mind, having the right program created with the right rests that you need is going to help you get those results. But even if you're trying to build muscle mass and you take breaks, then you also want to think, what can your body really challenge? Like, what can it do? And if you're maximizing your workout, you would be able to do a good 30, 45 minutes of something and then still have time for your warm up and cool down and then get out of there. But the amount of time that's in the gym doesn't mean you're going to have better results. If I'm there longer, I'm going to look better. No, it's what are you doing in that time that you're there to maximize the time that you're there, meaning that you're not talking and it's really about focusing on what it is that you're trying to achieve.
And I think to piggyback on that point of vertically loading or circuit training, so when somebody tells me they spend an hour and a half, even 90 minutes, when it doesn't even have to be that 2 hours, the first question I ask them is, well, how long is your rest in between the sets? And a lot of people don't realize that the rest is an acute variable. So when you talk about, if you're trying to do 12 reps and you have maybe 1 rep reserve in there, that just shows how intense it is. But a lot of people look at, okay, how much weight, how many reps, how many sets, but nobody talks about the rest in between. And we joked around about it earlier, the person who's doing the bench press, 3 minutes later, they're getting back onto the bench for their next set. They don't realize that, hey, if you're trying to hit that muscular development phase, you're trying to get physically bigger, you got to manage that rest. And, especially when I was a strength coach at Cal, the idea that, oh man, we only have a minute between sets, and that's one person working. And then if you're going to work in with somebody else, you really have to be on it. You have to, as soon as someone gets off, the next person is on. So in multiple scenarios, so with that circuit training, you're managing your rest because you're going one exercise to the next, get a drink of water, and then you're at the top of the order again. But if you're not circuit training, watch how long you spend in between the sets of your exercise. So in case you are doing a squat or if you are doing a bench, put a clock on yourself or look at the clock on the wall and see that, okay, by that next minute, on the minute, you're starting the next set. And that's going to help you keep that workout nice and dense, and you're not going to waste a whole lot of time, because if you're spending 4 minutes in between sets and you've got 4 sets and you have that three sessions in between, if you take 3 minutes, that's 9 minutes, right? So And if you take that over 6 exercises, that's a lot of time that you're doing nothing if you're not doing active rest. So I think the more is better. It's not. It actually dilutes the workout.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So from that standpoint, Wendy, I think we covered a lot of bases when it comes to common fitness beliefs and what people really need to know about what they need to do to get better, whatever it is their goal is.
100%.
100%. So Wendy, thanks for your insights, and appreciate the all the information and sharing your stories. But for those of you listening to us here, both Wendy Batts and I, Ken Miller, on Random Fit, we want to say thank you for listening. Like, follow, subscribe, download, share, rate us 5 out of 5, and let us know what you want us to talk about in future episodes, and we will do that. So until next time, everybody, take care and be well.